Welcome to the Occult Rejects. This episode, I got a very, very exciting guest, somebody I was very much looking forward to having on, and they had really good, Ike Baker suggested him, so that said enough. So very happy to get him on. But before we introduce Colin, let me introduce the other rejects on the show. We got Judith the Loon, just in case people don't know who she is. She's fairly new. I did have experiences with her in the OTO, and she was like, one of my best friends while I was there. So wanted to get her on the show, and here she is. So Judith, what is up?
Hi, I'm the Loon. You could catch me on the Loon on my channel on YouTube. Right now I'm on YouTube, and you can catch me on X as the Loon as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us, Judith. And Eros, what is going on? How are you?
I'm doing good, Nick. I hope everyone's doing well. You can find me on YouTube at Eros Up, and you can find me on X at Eros to Ethos.
Thank you. I appreciate you joining, Eros. Very nice to see you. And we got my man, the Headless Giant. What is going on, sir?
I think muted again. So, you can find me at the Headless Giant on Twitter and on Instagram and on YouTube. And I do shows with Nick here. We do 777 yesterday, where we go over the Kabbalah of Aleister Crowley. And I've got Headless's Magical Mailbag tomorrow, where you can send me your esoteric / occult / strange experiences, even dreams, at the Headless Giant Podcast at gmail.com. And we will read those on the show, as well as bringing symbols of our own. So we talk about symbols, ancient motifs, and everything else. And I've also got Alchemy Mondays with Eros right there. And I just recently got done making my first batch of extractions using DMSO. So if you've ever been curious about DMSO, whether or not it's good for extractions, go follow my Alchemy Monday show. And also the trilogues with Ethan Indigo, if he's coming back.
That's right, yeah.
On Sunday.
That's right, yes. And we possibly might have Ethan Indigo joining us. He was here earlier, and it seems like, I guess, his connections are having a problem. Hopefully he'll be back. But for the guest, we got Colin Conkwright. He is a writer, entrepreneur, Freemason, and esoteric researcher, investigating ancient and modern mystical experiences, philosophies, and theological principles in an effort to develop a coherent universalist approach to divine reality, with an emphasis on the experiential foundations of religious worldviews. He grew up researching at the ARE Edgar Cayce Center in Virginia Beach and collecting and analyzing firsthand accounts of anomalous phenomena. Colin has lectured at Masonic lodges and symposiums, serving briefly as an LEO to his mother lodge in Virginia Beach, and is the host of the YouTube channel American Esoteric, where he studies the Western esoteric tradition and the source texts of the world religions. Again, very excited to get him on. I'm sure we're going to have a great discussion. Colin, please, anything I left out or anything you want to promote, please let everybody know what's up and where they can find you.
No, that summed it up. That summed it up quite well. I appreciate you, sir.
Yeah. Awesome. So I guess, how I normally ask all my guests on this type of stuff. And since you have nothing else to say, I guess we'll get straight to it. What got you into the esoteric?
Yeah, so I kind of, I always had a sense that reality was more than, our society had led us to believe. Always had a very intense imagination and so forth. I have some early memories, like when I first heard about, lucid dreaming. I asked for a lucid dream, and that night had my first lucid dream. I had a very intense, I guess my earliest sort of phase of depression when I was 13, and kind of reached out with a prayer in a way that I hadn't before. And it was just very anomalous how this was, let's say, answered, right? So these kind of early experiences stuck with me. And, it's no secret, my friends and the audience on my channel, pretty much knows this. When I was 17, I had an out-of-body experience without any kind of, religious foundation or anything like that. I wasn't a churchgoer. I wasn't steeped in dogma or anything like this. But I was kind of pulling myself out of wrestling and out of all of these old structures that I'd been sort of pressured to continuously stay involved in. And I was like trying to figure out who I really was and what my purpose was and how to carve my own path. And it was sort of a musically induced flow state. And I felt this overwhelming intelligent presence on my way back from the studio, kind of knocking on the door. And I'd never felt anything like it until this time. And I was just sort of, I was saying, okay, you know, I know you're trying to come through. Just wait until I get home, right? And so I get home, and I'm realizing that this must be some kind of divinity, but I didn't have really a foundation. I didn't have an understanding of how to deal with these kind of things. So I put everything that I had in a kind of statement that was seeping with a little bit of arrogance, if you will. It was sort of, if the divine presence is real, you will show me what I need to know tonight. That was the exact statement. And sure enough, as I'm laying back, meanwhile, I'm in a very intense flow state, no drug involved. Pupils were extremely dilated, just felt very, very euphoric. Right. And rarely have I been able to recreate this kind of state of being. And, right as I'm laying back, and I only maybe spent a few minutes, on my back, I feel this fluttering and this pressure at the crown of my skull. And it just sort of pops. Yeah. It popped right out. Right. And immediately after that popping, my point of view awareness was above my body, but half of it was still like it came out of the top of my head and out of my throat, but the heart area, it was still connected with my body. So I was in this position, it kind of stalled out that process. And I had this realization coupled with a little bit of fear that, all right, this is exactly, I asked for this, and, it is answering, right? So I let the fear go away, and I just sort of said, take me, I surrendered. And it always, I have a lot of commentary on the side, but I'll just try to sum it up for you guys, if that's all right.
Yeah.
But in this heart space, it was like when it left the heart space, that was when I was thrust into a totally different plane. And the first place I was brought was this very messy and chaotic, kind of like a representation of my subconscious mind at the time. I mean, all of my memories, pieces of furniture, all these locations were all swirling together, and I was just getting bombarded by it. And, I realized I had to get out of it. And so I sort of remembered that, but prior to this experience, there was this other intelligent, let's call it the guide, that was with me. So I say, I had this realization that there was this other presence that was with me in this experience. And I just say, okay, this is all inside of me. I need to clean this up. And it sort of gave me this kind of energetic check mark, like, yes. And then it took away that location and brought me to another one. It brought me to this very terrifying looking classroom. I always hated the regular school setting, right? So I was hanging upside down in this very like cliche looking classroom, black and white, and it was shrinking, and since I had to realize something in this last location in order to move on, I had a sense that, I probably had to do the same thing here. And I realized, all right, I'm not supposed to go to college. And it filled me with peace, and it took the setting away. Whether or not I was going to go to college was a big issue in my life at the time. Right. So then it brought me to a very serene and like a definitely new location that kind of had an existence of its own. It felt like, and it was purely peaceful. I was sitting on a bank beside this lake or a river or a moving body of water, and it was pitch black, but I could see everything. And, if I focused on any minute detail, I could zoom in intensely into the smallest little detail of this place, but it was simultaneously pitch black. So there was something clearly different about this. All the colors, all of our regular colors that we know and love are represented totally differently in this place. Blue is not blue here. It's a different kind of blue. I know this sounds kind of nonsensical to some, but
I've had experiences like that where the colors, I can't explain it. It's different than what's here. It's almost like looking at it like a thermal camera color. It's fucking weird. It's not.
Yeah. There definitely seems to be, And meanwhile, I had no idea that other people had experienced these kinds of things at this time. But of course, you can imagine afterwards learning all of these things, you know, I'm like, wow, you know, this is a universal situation, right? And so across from this body of water, I'll try to sum it up here. Across from this body of water, this beautiful, magnificent, otherworldly blue light appeared in these bushes, right? And immediately when I beheld the light, I was just filled with, you know, let's just call it unconditional love, because that's exactly what it was. And my immediate thought was, I want to be closer to this light. And at the speed of thought, I was there. I had crossed the body of water, which I later learned was a very archetypal situation. I crossed this body of water. Now I was right in front of this light. And then I thought, I want to be the light. And once again, you know, at the speed of my thinking, I was this light. And then I started shooting upwards. And I was shooting upwards at this infinite rate. And the light was also expanding. And you know, it seemed like I was doing this for hours, shooting upwards, this light expanding. And there was a choir of voices chanting along with me, I am the light. I am the light. I am the light. Like 10,000 times, 10,000 voices, just obliterating me with this same statement. I am the light. And then kind of at the peak of this experience, I sort of come out and over something. I'm still this light. And now I'm in this sort of velvety black void. Felt very peaceful though. It felt like home, you know? And I was sort of led to pose a question, because I had some sense that I was still like an earthbound, you know, entity, like all of my, you know, what my name was, where I lived, like who my parents were, all of those little details were gone, you know, but I had some kind of inkling that this was, I had sort of asked for this, right? And, you know, baked into what had just happened were a lot of answers, you know, of course. But I posed the question to my guide, you know, if this is what we truly are, you know, how did it ever? And I sort of left that statement like ... How did it ever, you know, how did we ever fall, if you will, right?
How the fuck did I end up here, right?
Yeah.
So what
And
the
so
fuck? Explain that to me, please.
And as soon as I asked the question, it took the
It
light
ended,
away.
right? Yeah, you thought itself and
Well,
it was over, probably.
Well, it took the light away, and then I started falling, and I was falling and falling and falling, you know, faster and faster. And I had this tiny little realization that the falling might never end. And that created a teeny little, like a little sense of fear. But as soon as I bought into the fear, it amplified like exponentially, to the point where, you know, it was just pure screeching black terror that, like, if we were to feel in the physical body, we would just, it would just kill us immediately, you know? No one wants to arrive in this level of terror. And, you know, this is where it got a little crazy. Sort of, I was sensing that there was like this place that I was falling toward, and I heard this blood curdling laughter, you know, as if, like, I don't buy into the sort of Satan is an actual singular entity or anything like that, but as if, you know, Satan himself was laughing at the bottom of this place. That was what I heard. And, you know, so I asked the guide, like, okay, you've answered my question. You've shown me what I need to know. Like, I'm ready to go back. And it immediately, without hesitation, filled me with peace, took that fear away. And I got this sense that I was being moved somewhere else. And it was sort of like, you know, it sort of told me, like, but one more thing, you know, you're not ready to go back yet. One more thing. And it showed me one side of my face. A light shined on one side of my face, and it was the most monstrous creature, the worst possible version of myself that I could ever become. And when I first looked at it, it was like, if I ever actually encountered this person, who, by the way, lives inside of me, it is an aspect of me, the only thing I could think of would be to, like, destroy it immediately. And then the light shifted to the other side of my face. It was, you know, the most compassionate, the most transcendent and harmonious version of myself, the true embodied self that I could become. And obviously, I think the message is pretty clear with that. And then I got this sense, that experience was taken away. And I got this sense of being above Virginia Beach, then of being above my neighborhood, then being inside of my bedroom, and then slowly, I don't know if y'all have ever had sleep paralysis. I'm sure you've talked about that on your show, but it was I was kind of reanimating the body in this sort of sleep paralysis kind of state, and slowly had to twitch my way out of there. And then of course I jump up and throw myself on my knees and just thank you. And that, so that is the origins. Without that experience, a lot would have been different in my life. So yeah.
That is a wild story, man. Thank you so much for telling that. There was a lot in that I
thanks for listening, guys. Yeah.
I've said it my own way in my own show. And I got to talk to you one day for real. That was some fucking weird shit you said that I've identified with a lot of it. Some things I just do want to ask you, and I don't want to make this situation like the focus of the show.
Yeah.
Did you have any, when you said it felt like it came out of the top of your head, was it where like the yarmulke would be? Kind of like, and like right here, like in the back when you felt like you said it was,
I would say so. If anything, it was like the peak, like the
yeah, exactly.
My head. Yeah.
Did you have any physical feelings in your body prior to that, or anything going on?
Yes. And I mean, language always fails these kind of things, but you can sort of, induce a kind of simulacrum of this feeling through meditation or pneumaturgy, which is sort of what I've been kind of formally practicing. But it was like a fluttering. It was like there was an energetic current. Yes, there was this energetic current, inside of there, but it wasn't physicalized. Like it was sort of the animating factor, right? And it was definitely, as soon as there was a lot of pressure right here, and as soon as it popped out of there, it was this very audible, like, jarring departure of this kind of, the awareness. And by the way, the visual, you'll hear it in near-death experiences, and this is, I experience this as well. The visual POV, it's like 360 degrees. It's sort of, you have this general awareness, sort of spherical awareness, but you can focus on a singular point in that awareness, right? So that very, very bizarre, and
like
kind of
swirling around like a camera, like kind of like just, it's very weird.
Yeah.
Right?
It's like untranslatable to the physical experience, but there it sort of feels very natural.
Yeah, that is wild, dude. Did you ever once see an eclipse at all in these visions or anything that you saw prior to?
I haven't seen one in a vision. I have seen a full solar eclipse, like in person, though.
Oh no, I meant like meditating or like with your eyes closed during this type of shit. I always do. That's what I was just asking. Every time I have that experience, always the same visuals over and over and over again. Always.
I've had, I don't know if this addresses exactly your question, but in meditation, there's been this internal light source that kind of blinks, and it's bluish for me. So I've had that a few times.
Oh, there was another thing too that I thought was interesting when you talked about the blue light, like that I even I visualized stuff like that during my experience. And it's like, I've noticed through other people's experiences, even Crowley, there's always like a blue light showing up in one of their fucking experiences. I always wonder about, like, is that like kind of like a nod, or they're trying to tell them like, this is my story. If that sounds familiar to you, you really know what I'm saying.
Well, yeah, it seems like, there's some people describe a white light, some people describe a golden or a blue light. It's a mystery to me as to what the different colors represent.
Right? Am I doing it right? Did I do it wrong?
I will say, though, I think there seemed to have been some kind of personal touch there. I mean, blue was like my favorite color, sort of thing. Yes. But I doubt that had anything to do with it. Yeah, I mean, this might have nothing to do with it at all. But I mean, blue is sort of the throat, the area of the throat, and that was activating. That was a part of the transformation I was going through with music, with vocalization, with like really long, intense flow states in conversation. So it's like, honestly, through that activation of the throat area was kind of what induced the state of being that led to the experience. So there might be some association there, you know, sort of speculating.
Interesting way to look at it. I like that. That's a nice way to look at that. I might think about that. All right, man. So after that, wow. So I guess like what got you into doing like I guess what you're doing now? I know another thing is you're also big into ancient philosophy. Was that something that you started off with like when you kind of got into this stuff, or was that something you found later on that you fell in love with?
Yeah, so you know, after that experience, there were like I met a lot. I had a lot of new friendships. A whole new world was opening up to me. You know, I was exposed to different non-canonical biblical texts. You know, different Freemasons like Manly P. Hall and their sort of very broad secret teachings, comparative works, and whatnot. And it just opened me up to that there's a whole other world out here, and it's somehow kind of now it started feeling familiar, right? And then there was, you know, a lot of bizarre synchronicities, you know, a host of other different sort of anomalous and phenomenal experiences. You know, 2 years or so after that, I had my first UFO experiences, the classical orb phenomena, which, you know, I encounter 1 or 2 of these kind of every year. Sort of thing, but there was a period where it was very intense. So all of these experiences were kind of happening parallel to my diving into like the source texts of you know, ancient philosophy. I had this inclination to go straight to the sources, you know, buying the works of Plato and looking into the different Neoplatonists, looking into the apocryphal writers. Iamblichus, for instance, as soon as I picked him up, you know, he dragged me by the heart into his work, and a, you know, big connection there. And then I started expanding out, trying to collect, you know, reports from like the early North American explorers and what they had to say about the Native American religions, you know. So always trying to search for the earliest sources available. And then meanwhile, you know, having these kind of experiences that were spontaneous, and just trying to keep up my own sort of practice. And, you know, I was expanding my sort of friend circle with a lot of different people that also were deep into this research, right? So after about 10 years of reading and writing and, you know, developing in this kind of space, I knew it was sort of like one in one with my purpose and my mission, if you will. But I didn't really have a vessel to you know, I didn't have an outlet. So I was just writing to the abyss, just writing for myself, just writing to develop the skill. So I'd amassed, you know, tons of research and tons of notes and tons of writing. And, you know, I started American Esoteric to kind of finally bring that and set it on the table and just start sharing, just finally get started with, you know, this other path instead of kind of the classical kind of 9-to-5, you know, careerist route that never really resonated with me. So I hope that addresses that.
Yeah. No, thank you. Did you ever as you know, get a little personal, did you ever, like, after this experience, did ceremonial magic ever like come into mind, or did you ever get into stuff like that?
Not really. No, that I would say the magical department I've never really tapped into. I would say here or there I've dabbled, you know, but yeah. I generally think that, you know, we already live in a reality that is magical, and that these effects are already occurring, right? So, you know, if someone might practice magic for a manifestation, or to induce a lucid dream, or, you know, pick whatever sort of thing you're trying to do, these things can already happen naturally. I get that for some folks they might not, and they might want to have more of an intentional kind of attraction there, which does work. But yeah, I guess I was fortunate to have a lot of these things just kind of just hit me out of nowhere when I wasn't really asking for them, and just start steering me in a different direction. Yeah.
Yeah, it kind of hit me pretty hard when I had that experience. Oh, there he is.
Well, one of these, I'd like to learn more about your own experience.
Yeah, no, definitely, for sure. Oh man, I was just gonna ask you something. I totally forgot. All right. Oh, so like your Edgar Casey experience. Oh, did anybody else have any questions before I keep going?
I was just going to ask that question about the Edgar Casey experience.
Well, I guess maybe before moving on to that, you mentioned a guide. I guess how did you know it was a guide? What did that feel like for you?
Yeah, it was as so like I said, this is why all the great mystics describe these experiences as ineffable, right? That the language fails. But the first, as leading up to the experience, it was as clear as if there was another intelligence operating like behind your eyes, as if someone's not breathing on your neck, but occupying your neck, and it was, there was no question that there was something else. The guide has been kind of my title that I applied to it. But since then, I've learned about like Hermes, of course, guide of souls, very much a guide of people that are practicing kind of music and writing and eloquent speech and all of and dreaming, the guide of souls during the dreams. So there's of course these other archetypal kind of guides. But yeah, it's hard to describe how that comes through other than it's just inherent in the experience. And that when I was thinking and communicating with this other, it was answering me immediately, and that there was this dialogue. Now I'm not necessarily going to reduce that to an external sort of spirit or something. It could have been an kind of this oversoul or a higher self, a higher representation of myself. I entertain that as well. Or it could have been a very classical kind of spirit guide or archetypal sort of intelligence. Yeah.
Did you get any sense of scale when you were outside of your body? Did you feel larger or smaller than you were inside of your body? Or were you not able to tell the difference?
Yeah, it was incomprehensible expansion. It was sort of you're touching everything. You can be anywhere. Everything is moving at the speed of thought. Everything is given back to you as soon as you formulated a complete kind of thought. The response is immediate. The movement is immediate. So it's almost as if we're just nodes of the same universal consciousness, and the physical experience is this densification. This illusionary kind of densification where we can have the experience of being limited in this one, location. And we have to talk to each other, at a distance and everything else. But this is kind of it's more so of a construct. Whereas in base reality, it's just all a unified field. So, that was very much kind of communicated through the experience.
That's wild. Yeah. Hey, there's so much commonalities. When I had my experience, like it felt like I actually literally was like getting pulled out like an old like throw like this plane or something. It's hard to explain. Like almost like in 2001 Space Odyssey when they start showing like that weird shit at the end and everything looks like it's expanding. I was almost like kind of likened it till I was like, maybe that's what that would feel like. It was very weird. And then it was just like you were just part of whatever you were viewing or I was part of. It's like I was just like there within it. It's so hard to explain.
Yeah,
very weird. When now I know the one time when you said like the fluttering, and then we'll move on. This was another thing I did want to bring up, but I often liken it to like feeling like water was flowing through my body, or if like I was on fire, or if I was on fire, but it didn't hurt. It was just a flickering of the flame I could actually feel.
Yes,
it was very much like that. I used to say like if I was laying on the beach and the wave crashed and it rolled up the sand and somehow I had like the bottom of my feet were cut open and the water could run through me. It almost feels like the water flowing and then I fucking blow right out the top of my head. It's fucking wild.
So you had the same coming out of the top of your head experience.
Oh yeah, that's why I was asking. Yeah. Man, I said that shit all the time. I was like, it's always by where they put the little Jew hat. Right?
Yeah,
that's what I thought.
Yeah, and in a more visceral and kind of negative association with that area of the body. Well, we have the top knots everywhere, and of course the Native American practice of scalping, right? That was another very different and raw recognition of that, the importance of that place in the body. You know, that they are saying, while your soul is leaving your body, I am with you. I'm grabbing you. You know, so yeah, that's another universal right there. Yeah.
That is
Well,
what.
that brings up cradle headboarding as well as the elongated skulls of some North American mummies. We went to this Quest for Ancient Civilizations conference, and Dan, the debunker, was there talking about a headboarding civilization up in Washington State, and they actually built this massive stone bridge across one of these raging rivers up there. And it was strange because this area that had this bridge was specifically mined out for that rock to be used in the construction of the city that was nearby. And it's just like, how are all of these things lined up? Well, it turns out it was a Freemasonic company that was doing all of the construction work there, and they were actually involved with finding out about the native civilizations and using sacred geometry to put the rocks back together inside of this town. And it's like, these things are not coincidences. There has to be some sort of a linkage between this sort of out-of-body headboarding civilization and what the subsequent mystery schools are doing to sort of maybe make themselves a part of it or hide it or something.
Yeah, the elongated head situation is very mysterious.
I've wondered about that because of my experience. I always started thinking, like, what's up with the fucking, like, even like the cone heads? Everyone was like, yo, like, that's weird. I don't know.
Yeah, well, you know how Terrence McKenna used to say, if y'all listen to him, he's like, that there comes that moment where you realize, something terrible happened. Something terrible happened in the past, right? That sort of led to this kind of, let's just say the fall, the idea that we can forget what we really are, and I tend to I entertain this, that it must be something physical. And like the Monroe Institute, they talk about when people are getting out of the body, there's this clicking, there's this popping. Like, yes, that's the same situation.
It's like
it's almost like there's a physical mechanism within the brain itself, a physiological switch that you can activate, and it boom, you're gone, you're out.
I do have a question bringing it to that, because if you go through different traditions, if you go, I guess, at least 50, 100 years back, most of them, and I'm speaking from a female perspective, their practice was usually covering. At least if you were like doing a spiritual journey or you were attending a spiritual mass, I would say, it was like mandatory for at least the women to cover their head back there as well, not just the men with the yarmulkes. Now, and I'm wondering if that may be because we might accidentally during the practice fall into that trance as a way of preventing it from happening.
Are you saying fall into a trance that would prevent you from having the experience?
No, I'm like saying it's a way, like wearing that cover is to prevent you from falling into that trance during whatever services you're going to. Because I grew up Catholic, and when I was growing up, we didn't have to do it. But I remember my grandmother said, "Oh yes, when you had to go to church, you had to wear at least a little veil over your head in that aspect." And as I looked at other traditions, I've noticed that they had that tradition specifically for women. I'm not sure why. And I'm wondering if that's why they had that, because they never say why you had to do that. They just said it was the role.
Yeah, I think we're touching on a mystery that represents itself across cultures and across civilizations. And it seems to imply that this is this very special location. It's like, I believe I'm correct in saying that the crown chakra is above the head, right? It's not that, it's the one chakra that doesn't, that is above the head, right? And if you if you practice, like I'm formalizing my own practice, I call pneumaturgy, and you get into the meditative state, you get your breath balanced until it becomes automatic, and you visualize and sense deeply into these different areas of your body. And once you practice it and develop it, one of the strangest locations is this top of the head. And you can almost imagine like sort of this area above your head being sort of massaged, warmly massaged. And that will create a lot of sensations and kind of this low grade fluttering right on the top of the head. So I think that the covering of the head and all of its different forms is a recognition that this is possibly the gateway, the passage of the soul.
Oh, that's interesting. Thank you, sir. Maybe start thinking about a few other things. I don't want to get into it. Keep dragging this out, but
hey man, I got plenty of time.
That's wild. So yeah, I guess does anybody have any questions before we move on to the Edgar Casey? Since we wanted to talk to him about that. Guys are good. Judith, you got anything else? All right. So yeah, I guess how did you end up over there?
Yeah, I have a lot of family in Virginia Beach, so it was just sort of like a second home. But the Edgar Casey Center and the library there, it's like invisible to the locals that don't have like sort of the eyes to see it. Like everyone just they drive past it. Maybe it's like a cult. We're not really sure. I mean, I know people who've lived in Virginia Beach their entire lives, right there on the ocean front, and they haven't given this huge building just an inkling of a thought. Whereas people from far out of town, see it as this very important and exotic location. So, I mean, it came to me as soon as it should have, during the time in my life where I kind of needed it. I needed to be able to talk to other people who have had similar experiences. And most of the time when I go to Edgar Casey, I'll end up just, synchronistically having a discussion with someone that has like an answer to my question. It's like a well-known thing to the people who frequent the library, that there's like a library angel. And if you go in there looking for a particular book, you're just going to find it. And I mean, when I was researching Atlantis, I just walked into the library. I was brought to this whole little section, on Atlantis, found the book, right there that I needed to. So there's a lot of this stuff there. And it's like, Edgar Casey was yesterday. Like he just passed, that's yesterday. Edgar Casey lives closer to us than Jesus lived to most of the people who created the church, right?
Right.
So he's still like right behind us, and the world still doesn't necessarily know what to do with him yet. A small group of people do, but we're still like adjusting. And if a couple more of his predictions come true, it's just gonna create even more validity there. Yeah.
What I think is interesting about Casey is just how ancient a lot of what he was doing really was. Like the sleeping prophet motif comes straight through ancient Greece. Like they had the Asclepions where you would go to sleep inside the temple, you'd sleep in, and then you would have visions, or you would see how to cure yourself, and these gods would come to you in your dreams. And it's like all of that is Edgar Casey. And if you look at his charts, his astrological charts, it all matches up with this asteroid called Asclepion. So it's it's all right there, straightforward with all of the associations. And it's strange that people, they have a hard time with Casey. A lot of different people, a lot of different groups.
Yeah, the same people like myself that are very interested in the ancient world and all of these different experiences. We can sometimes get frozen in time. We can get frozen in the ancient world and in these ancient texts. And of course, scholars are famous for this. They will wax philosophic endlessly about these ancient texts and manuscripts, which is all well and good. But if we're not matching that up with modern experience, that is comparable to all of these ancient systems, we're not really connecting the dots. We're just sort of pedantically, spouting all of this stuff out. I call it terminological paralysis. That is what a lot of academics and scholars in this space are stuck in. They like to hone in on semantics and these, I don't want to get too off the rails on that, because it's a whole nother rabbit hole of frustration. But basically what I think is needed is we need to combine religious studies with parapsychology already. It just needs to happen, because if you're not looking at religious studies, if you're not looking at the mysteries, the initiations, all the different prophets and divine figures that have happened, all of the different accounts of all this wide range of experiences, these aren't just historical accounts, right? These are people having experiences. And this is it's formalized now as the experiential source theory. It's suggesting Gregory Shushin, who does a lot of the best NDE work out there. The idea is that the origins of afterlife belief, the origins of, natural, like the common spiritual beliefs, the origins of these principles, it doesn't just come from like one or two cultures who developed it and then it physically spread around the world, or like speculation or something, or like accidents and hallucinations. It comes from these natural experiences that are entirely universal, totally inherent to the human race. And they happen everywhere you look. Everywhere where there's surviving records of some spiritual belief, there's experiences that lead up to them.
Right.
So, I think it's easy for people studying this stuff who don't have a good understanding of those experiences and maybe lack the experiences themselves. It's easy to write off those experiences and to just shrug it all away, and to start discussing this in this very like terminological thing where, we can't talk about Greek shamanism because, the Greeks weren't shamans in the sense of a Siberian shaman. And it's like, okay, yeah, I get that. But all of those things are low stakes, right? Whereas the experiential source theory, kind of the more universalist take, which is where my work is right now, we're discussing these high stakes beliefs, right? Like whether or not Jesus was really born of a virgin, or, pick your dogma and pick your religious dogma. Those are kind of low stakes, opinionated, beliefs that we're never really going to have like access to the historical truth there, right? But the soul surviving physical death, that is as high of a stakes as it could get. That is a high stakes religious belief that is across cultures, and it has its foundation in experiences of the soul surviving physical death. We don't just, believe it because it's this hopeful thing to believe in. It's because people have been leaving their bodies forever, right? That's why, John Smith can arrive on the shores of Chesapeake in the 1600s and figure out that the Powhatans also believed in a first principle deity, a hierarchy of gods, ghosts and spirits, and the immortality of the soul, right? And then he says, well, they don't just believe this willy-nilly. Two guys, even as recent as the last year, had near-death experiences, and they saw all of these things, and then they came back and informed their tribe about them. This is happening everywhere you look. It's happening across, ancient China, obviously in ancient Greece, obviously where all the records that actually survive. But yeah, we need to start, which is my contention, we need to start looking at religious studies from this more universalist and experiential standpoint to really make sense of it.
Right. If you take away the form of the different experiences and just stick to the methodology, you see the same thing happening again and again and again, but everybody gets stuck on the form instead of the actual experience. And it's like, well, how do we get around people not understanding that these are highly associative events? Like, this is supposed to draw deeply from your own culture and your own experience. That's what's being shown to you through yourself, right? How does one actually, navigate that water? It's pretty perilous, I mean, how would you tell somebody that and then expect not to get hit afterwards?
Yeah, yeah. It seems like there are individuals that, for whatever reason, are inherently more likely to have these experiences. We'll never really know exactly why, uh, uh, but but I think there's a lot of cultures, not necessarily modern cultures, where these things were just these things were very natural. It wasn't like, can it be proven or not? You just simply had a shaman nearby, and when you had like a very bizarre lucid dream or something, or a prophetic dream that came true, when you had a spontaneous out of body experience, some kind of phenomena like this, you went to this master that was in your local culture that had some degree of the answers. And guess what? The spiritual leader, that is a universal as well. That's another universal. I mean, pick your location that has any kind of spiritual belief, and there's going to be a leader there, probably an elder or some kind of youth that is extremely the experiences for them are very prevalent and predominant. So, I mean, I have like 17, I'm working on a book where I hone in on like 17 principles that they're theological principles, spiritual beliefs that exist across cultures, and they all have an experiential component. And then I go and I demonstrate, looking through our historical sources and modern experiences, how people have been led to these same different beliefs through experiences and not through hearsay, speculation, dogma, and so on.
That's awesome. I like that.
It's exciting stuff. I love it.
Yeah. You mentioned Gregory Shushan. I had him on once. I should actually get him on again. That guy was awesome.
Oh,
Yeah.
really?
Yeah, for NDEs. Yeah. I like to cover that because I really do think that there's a lot of commonalities between that shamanism and like magical experiences. Some sort of connection.
Yeah, he's done amazing work. And that's why, he's known as like the leading expert in that area. And he's really grabbed on to the experiential source theory. And he's trying to hammer it home to his friends, in academia. And then he recognizes, like, on the other side of it, the practitioner side of it, this has been well known in the background. But I know that there's a lot of academics with big egos and small imaginations, so it's going to take a while for all of this stuff to catch up. But we just need to have the conversation anyway. We just need to get started and move the chess. Pretend as if the chess game is like 10 steps forward. As we need to sort of imagine that, okay, the immortality of consciousness, a lot of these aspects, the idea of a spirit world and these things, we kind of, if we operate as if they are already a given, then we can finally get to the mysteries of them. And we can finally, take the conversation forward instead of being stuck in this sort of paralysis where, we don't really want to give our conclusions. We don't really want to operate as if these things are inherently true, so, and I think this is happening. I think the cat's out of the bag, right?
I like it. Cat's out of the bag. All right.
Well, the more we talk about it, the more the cat is out of the bag, I think. So it's a great place to start, is starting to understand how this methodologically applies to so many different groups that it's time to study this as if we've got the right to, because we are humans. It's almost like you're prevented from a lot of different angles from people who think that you don't have the right to study this stuff, which is, I think is ridiculous.
Yeah, how do you measure the experiential credential? That's because there is something there. There is like a credit there. It's like to demonstrate that, you could say, you've either smoked DMT or you haven't. Someone who has smoked DMT is not going to listen, to someone who hasn't, explain what the experience is like. It is just, it is just like that with all of these things. Like, synchronicities. There's sometimes these synchronicities will come to you that are just so bizarre and so precise that there is no other explanation. The statistical chance of this actually happening in an accidental chance-based reality, it's just sort of impossible, right? Like one time I was pulled over, on my way back home, pulled over in town by this officer. I didn't have much money at the time, so I was like real bummed out. And, guy comes up to my window and he's like, "Hey man, your inspection sticker, et cetera, et cetera." But I was determined to get out of this ticket. I was determined. And so I'm like, what could possibly do it? What would make him reconsider giving me this ticket? And then, it came to me, a local state trooper, and I hadn't talked to this guy in like 4 years, but I knew of him. And I'll just say, John Doe, to keep him anonymous or whatever. And I turned to the officer and I'm like, "Do you know State Trooper John Doe?" And as his last name was leaving my mouth, he gets a call. And he looks at me while he's looking at his phone in the call, and then he turns it to me, and it's his name. It's the name of the state trooper right there. And this happened in like 3 seconds, right? And I look at him and I'm like, "Yep." Like, and then he took the call and he kind of walked back to his car. He still ended up giving me the ticket, whatever. That's his problem. But it was like, God was telling him, do not give this guy a ticket. That's what I like to interpret it as, right? But there's just, there's a lot of these synchronicities that are very precise. A cashier, I was talking to my best friend in the car on the way to the grocery store, telling him about this reoccurring dream. And then we get out of the car. We're not saying much in the grocery store. We get to the cashier. We don't even like greet the cashier yet. We didn't even have time to get, small talk. How are you doing? And he looks directly at me and he says, "If you're having reoccurring dreams of being back in a classroom, it means there's something back there, that there's a lesson you haven't learned." And I just look at my friend and we're just sort of flabbergasted, So, these are the kind of experiences that sort of, providence, right? Providence, fate, destiny. This is a sort of universal belief across different spiritual traditions. And it's a belief because people have these experiences that confirm them.
Did anybody have any more questions about the Edgar Casey thing before I start asking stuff?
I actually do. I'm unfamiliar with Edgar Casey. I know he had a lot of predictions, and you did mention earlier UFOs, and I'm wondering, did he have any predictions about UFOs or aliens or anything of the sort, since he had predictions of Atlantis?
I want to say that he did, but even if he didn't have a prediction there, he does confirm, in the KC way, he does confirm that we're not alone in the universe, and that there are different, extraterrestrial races that have been interested in the planet, and in the past have interacted in a direct way with previous civilizations. So he does definitely confirm that.
Oh, I did have somebody actually ask. Ethan. He texted me. He did have one question he wanted to see if I could ask, since he couldn't make it on the show. Did he have any predictions that like might have been for the USA, like in the upcoming year? Like anything specific, 2026 or around that, whatever in the future?
So 2026 is the Egyptian situation with the Sphinx, right? I know a guy who wrote a book that was published through the ARE's like publication mechanism, and it's all about 2026 and the idea that something will be unlocked, the Hall of Records and whatnot. So, but as for an American prediction, it's not looking good, folks. But he says it's I don't necessarily know the exact timeline, but it should be, the idea is that within our lifetimes, there's going to be a lot of geological upheavals, and that kind of Mississippi basin, the Mississippi will be expanded, and, the whole like East Coast, eastern area, east of the Mississippi will be its own island. A lot of Florida will be underwater. Japan entirely will be underwater. You know, there's a lot of it, right? But I will some of those dates have been off though. He has been off on a couple things, but then again, he has been very precise, like the Bimini Road discovery. I'm pretty sure he was precise almost to the year with that. He said, you know, in the coming years, he might have given this specific year, you're going to find traces in Bimini of, you know, the Atlantean civilization. So from the Casey perspective, Atlantis is way towards more towards America than like the Straits of Gibraltar. He's bringing it back to the Bahamas, off the coast of Florida, you know, where like Bermuda and things like that would make sense. So yeah, there's a lot there.
Thank you. Yeah, anybody else have any questions before I go ahead? All right. With that place, you know, I can't remember. We did have somebody on the show who's actually talked about it. Did you live there, or is it a place that you visited?
Yeah, I lived in Virginia Beach for a while.
Yeah, but like the place itself, like, did people stay there, or is it just like you kind of come and go?
I don't think anyone lives there. So there's like there's like on the hilltop there's like you know, they do a lot of massage and sound healings, and then there's like people's offices, and there's a little restaurant. And then on the lower portion, it's a big library, and there's like a lecture hall, a huge library, meditation room, you know, bookstore, different venues like that, and then like a little meditation garden out back. So no one lives there, but I would imagine people that work there live quite, you know, close.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha. I was just wondering. All right. So, is there anything else that you wanted to talk about, kind of like about like what your own stuff is about as well?
Well, you know, I'm definitely pursuing this kind of experiential universalist research, and, you know, drilling home on a number of these universal principles. I'd be happy to reel off a couple of those and kind of, yeah. So, you know, I try to keep these in like keeping these sort of high stakes, like I was talking before, right? It's like whether or not some historical person somewhere actually existed, if they really wrote this book or not, you know, all of these sort of historical opinionated things. Those are low stakes. They're fun. They're great to discuss. I go down, you know, I nerd out on it all the time, but they're not really high stakes, right? So it's like, you know, when we're talking about these universal principles, you know, there's always this universal sovereign, a first principle deity, a supreme being, a grand architect, or in the Buddhist sense, like ultimate reality, right? So God is kind of our fill-in for what the most reducible and yet all-encompassing reality actually is. And this principle manifests itself, you know, all across the world. And I would say the experiential component there is people having the experiences where your ego is entirely obliterated. You're unifying with an all-encompassing light that is communicating this everythingness to you. And that's why I think that a lot of mystics bring back this first principle understanding, and then they associate it with ineffability, because that ineffability, the unspeakable nature of God and this experience, is due to them having experiences where, you know, language fails to explain them, right? So, you know, there's the first principle with that experiential component. Now we have the idea of the soul, the immortality of the soul, generally that consciousness will survive physical death. Of course, we've already covered the experiential component there, the idea of out-of-body experiences, mystical experience, NDEs, and so forth. Then we get into the divine hierarchy, the idea that there is kind of a stemming off from this first principle, there are subsidiary deputized intelligences that exist in kind of a hierarchy of power, right? You know, the early mystical Christians had their taxonomies of angels, their angelic ranks and hierarchies. Of course, the Neoplatonists, you know, Iamblichus discussed the different entities and light phenomena that would show up, and he started classifying them in their different, you know, these guys will appear like this, This will be sensed, more so through a dream. And then he started ranking them and so forth. But of course, in indigenous cultures, you also had kind of this hierarchy of beings, the hierarchy of spirits. Sometimes they were broken up into families, into genealogies. So the experiential component there would be having actual experiences with other intelligences, other disembodied intelligences that manifest themselves to you along different kind of, I guess, ranks of power and energy and feeling, right? So that would be that experiential component there. Then we get into spirits generally, the idea that spirits exist, okay? Whether or not they're demons, ghosts, angels, elementals. Of course, the experiential component, kind of obvious here, is encountering apparitions, right? Encountering even in your dreams, other beings that look different that you've never seen before in your physical waking reality. So that would be that experiential component that would help confirm the belief in spirits. And of course, a lot of magic is predicated on having a relationship or a correspondence with a spirit that is going to help you perform something, maybe help you heal, and so forth, right? And then you can have subcategories breaking down from the spirits, like the guardian spirit, the guardian angel, right? This particular type of spirits. Socrates had his tutelary daimon that always told him what not to do, and he drank his potion that led to his death. And he said it was a good thing because his daimon had not told him not to do it, right? So people describe like involuntary seizure. So the idea of doing something involuntarily that might have saved your life or gotten you out of a tricky situation, or led to a very positive situation. You don't know why you went to a place, but something was telling you to go there. That's the experiential component. Then we have generally like morality. Where is a spiritual tradition worth studying that doesn't have a common morality, at its foundations? Experiential component is quite obvious there. I think it's very natural to have a sense of goodness and to feel positivity inside of yourself and see what it's like to give it to others and to act with compassion. That's kind of ingrained in morality itself, is that the experiences confirm the reason why this stuff is important. And then, of course, if you're a terrible person and you fall off a cliff, like, this ancient Greek Thespesius, I believe, he fell off this precipice. He was this sort of hedonist, didn't care about anything, always gambling and spending his money, right? And then he fell off this rock, hit his head, and died. And he awoke on his funeral, bench a few days later, and he was a totally changed man. So he brought morality into his life from a near-death experience, you see? So there's experiential component there as well. Providence and fate, destiny, fortune. We've already covered that, with synchronicity being the experiential component. These things go on and on. The magic, all the different magical systems. Well, people developed these in different cultures because they would experience, seemingly or legitimately, the effects of their magical beliefs and their magical rituals, right? Altering the weather, all these different things. Finally the shaman gets it to rain. It must be real, right? So there's always those experiential components. And then we have rituals, ceremonies, the mysteries, the initiatory rites. Of course, there's the experiential component of not only going through these things in the symbolic and, kind of dramatic ceremonial fashion, but, these mysteries at some time or another were actually able to convey a mystical experience. Whether or not they sometimes use psychedelics, they probably did, but I lean more towards the side of that these were entirely natural. And as Strabo's very long passage description of the mysteries, he talks about how music and chants and literature and masks, and he talks about all these different components that would create this like layers of emotional, charged emotion that would lead up into this experience, right? So thus, ritual ceremonies become important because they can lead to these experiences and they're kind of grounded there. Then we have prayer, kind of obvious, sacrifices and offerings. You wouldn't continually make offerings to a spirit or for a particular purpose if at one point or another it wasn't answered, and it wasn't answered in this kind of concrete way that the society could really grab onto and believe in, right? There's always a post-death reconciliation, a judgment or a karmic continuity, the idea that the account will be settled, like what you do in life will have an effect in the next world. And of course, the experiential component there is people leaving their bodies and having a very hellish experience and being warned, hey, you hurt a lot of people, there's going to be consequences to your actions. Now, I don't believe in, some sort of eternal hellfire or anything like that. I think that's pretty silly, and we could get into that for quite a long time. But the idea of there being terrifying astral experiences is pretty grounded across the world, right? Just like there being very euphoric and profoundly positive experience as well. Reincarnation, there's experiential components to this also. There's, as Ian Stevenson, the great researcher on reincarnation, he was going around to these indigenous cultures, and they would have birthmarks, and some of them would be able to describe, this birthmark is a kind of linked back to a different lifetime where I was killed in this area. Or I know a girl who had this memory of a spear being run through her back, and she's always had back problems in this area, right? So you have this sort of memory or experiential, somewhat abstract component there, but I think some cultures seem to be able to retain those memories better. And we've all seen those, like, local ABC reporting on the 5-year-old kid who took his mother to, like, the grave, the grave that has his body that he lived in before he incarnated in the present incarnation. The famous case of the Simona twins, right? This Italian family, this mother, she had a daughter. The daughter tragically died when she was like 5 years old. The mother goes through this profound period of grief, and she starts having reoccurring dreams where she hears her daughter and sees her daughter coming through and saying, "Mom, you need to try to conceive. I will come back," right? And the husband's, I believe, deceased sister also started appearing in this dream. Hey, we're coming back. Don't be so sad, or else you're going to prevent this from happening. Try to conceive, et cetera, et cetera. And then, of course, they do conceive. And in the dreams, they said, we're going to manifest as twins, and your daughter's going to come back. And sure enough, months go by. All of a sudden, she realizes she's pregnant, and she's like, oh my gosh, is this actually happening? And then, of course, the doctor says, you have twins, right? And she gives birth to twins, and they resemble the daughter that they resemble the same daughter that had previously died, right? So that's a profound case that points to reincarnation not just being a speculation, not just being a sort of opinion, but it has these experiential components as well. So yeah, there are a lot of these. What do you guys think?
I'm with you. What were you saying, Headless?
I was going to say, I've heard of a story of a 4-year-old who had the memories of a World War II pilot. And so he actually brought his whole family out to where he was shot down in the Pacific. It was very, very specific, and they actually found the wreckage of where this little boy was reincarnated from. So it's pretty specific. I mean, it's kind of hard to deny that there isn't some sort of interchange between souls and reality. I mean, who knows when you melt all form away, whether or not there's some sort of a continuity that you would even describe as self anymore, right? Like, wouldn't there have to be something there for an ego to exist?
I think the memory, there's some part of the memory that does stay with the soul and is associated with the moon. But there's this book, I think, that medical doctors are psychiatrist. I don't remember. It was like children who remember past lives. And there's so many accounts of them just like remembering things in such great detail, and then like it's true to history. And so it is pretty interesting.
Yeah.
I would be so pissed to start over.
Mm. Yeah, well, this opens up a you know, a whole nother area of discussion, right? Like I personally think reincarnation is kind of a misnomer. Not that the experience of like linearly, okay, so you die in 2025 and then your opportunity to reincarnate is only after that. It's I think what really is going on is that the present moment is really the only moment, right? We only live in the now. And so the idea of having this linear, past life, like we can only connect with our past lives that we lived here. Well, really, if we can connect with any other life, I don't think there's that limitation. There's that linear limitation. If we do live in this kind of consciousness is flooded over everything and time is an illusion, then everything is happening simultaneously. And so that means all of the different incarnations that your oversoul has ever had are all happening right now, right? And we just might be able to connect with some over here and some over there. So I think the linear reincarnation story that we've sort of been telling for a while, I think that's kind of a misnomer, and that we're going to start realizing that all incarnations happen simultaneously. And that creates a very, a different sort of shift in thinking there. But it's a fun one to try to sit with.
Did your idea of reincarnation change after you had that experience?
I would say I didn't really have too many ideas about reincarnation before that, right? But yeah, so it opened my mind to all of these things. And you know, um sometimes, like through these near death experiences and out of body experiences, they will go to a place and discuss with beings like, okay, you can go back to your current life, or and when you finally die, you will have a choice to incarnate again in the earth plane if you want, or move on. So I think there's a lot of like of course proving this is another thing, and I don't think we're really here to discuss that, right? We can entertain these ideas, but I do think that I think it's like the divine reality isn't as hard on us as we like to think, right? Like even if we do some terrible things in this life, there's always a way to balance the account, and it doesn't necessarily require a tremendous amount of suffering. Now, if you do a bunch of terrible things, like, yeah, you're gonna have to balance the account. Whatever that looks like is probably different in every single case. But for instance, if I betray someone in a viscerally brutal way, and they've figured out how to actually forgive me for doing that, then I might not actually have to balance that account in the same way if they hadn't forgiven me. You see what I'm saying? So I think we can alter our karma here and now. We can change how our the links of the karma actually manifest, you know, in the hereafter. We can change these things now. We can, like, so a lot of people are caught in these abstractions. Which, it's always fun and it's always amusing to abstract for a while, but at some point we have to really get in deep with ourselves and, like, confront our demons and bring these things to the surface. And it's like, you will probably have a way more profound spiritual realization and activation if you can find it in your heart to forgive some of the people that hurt you, to say sorry to some people that you hurt and really mean it, look them in their eyes and say sorry. These are all ways of healing in the here and now that don't have to necessarily carry over.
Yeah, my idea of reincarnation changed kind of drastically, or my idea of life after death after I had like similar experience of yours. I
How
wasn't
old
too
were
sure.
you? How old were you when that happened?
God, that was probably like it was right before COVID.
Oh,
Yeah,
had
yeah.
you been interested in
Yeah, I was already like practicing ceremonial magic in the OTO at that time.
okay.
Yeah, yeah. It wasn't what I was trying to go for. I wasn't expecting that. It happened. Yeah, and then I tried, then it happened a few more times. But yeah, very, very interesting and wild.
Yeah. I'm sure it solidified a number of your beliefs and worldviews.
Yeah, worldviews for sure too. Yeah.
Yeah.
So whatever. Um, yeah, yeah, yeah. Damn, I wanted to ask you something, and I got lost in this. What you were saying here. Is there anything else anybody wanted to ask or add?
I could go.
Yeah,
Um,
go for it.
all right. So you talked about Iamblichus very passionately and excitedly. Um, why is he your favorite Neoplatonist?
Hmm. I as far as being my favorite, God, it's so hard to because one day it's like, yeah, he's my favorite, and then the next day, it's a different one. But I would say this: I was deeply obsessed with Hermes and Hermes Trismegistus and all of the things that are implied with the most fascinating god that there ever was and ever will be with Hermes, right? And so when I picked up Iamblichus, he answered so many questions that I had about, the purported author of the Corpus Hermeticum, Hermes Trismegistus. So Iamblichus says all of the Egyptian priests attributed their own writings to Hermes in this kind of, they're sort of attributing the Hermes consciousness as the kind of archetype that was coming through them. Um, and that answered so many questions that I had about Hermes, but Iamblichus touches on so many different parts. He refers to he seems to have access to a uh rich tradition of experiences and ritual practices and what happens during these ritual practices and what happens in these kind of, you know, these temple settings that is not necessarily for public consumption or public knowledge, right? So he gets into actual, luminous manifestations, and what these different beings are, and that they can come through during your dreams. He describes what happens in the hypnagogic states, falling into sleep, and the hypnopompic kind of states, coming out of sleep. And I've had experiences of hearing like loud voices, like right when I'm waking up, as if they're in the same room, and that's kind of a clairaudient hypnopompic phenomena. And Iamblichus discusses this, right? So when you have someone as far back as almost 2,000 years ago, kind of discussing these experiences at a master level, uh, you just got to sit there and be like, wow, he had access to a lot of profound wisdom about this other aspect of reality. And he demonstrates it time and time again. And he was kind of like he put Porphyry in his place in this exchange in the letter to Anibo. So yeah, he rocked me, and I couldn't get enough of him. And he wrote the life of Pythagoras, uh De Anima, so he's got a lot of other profound works out there. But I find him to be a very trustworthy voice back in the ancient world, because he's not afraid to discuss the details of these experiences, and he discusses them to the point where he's had them himself, because there's elements, there's things that happen, like for instance in the hypnagogic state, like as you're going to sleep. It's sort of like the technique is kind of like, as you're going to sleep, watch, like try to bring a little bit of your awareness into that place that you're coming to as you are sleeping. And if you do that continuously, profound things can happen. And he describes some of these things. So yeah, so much to say about Iamblichus. Thank you for asking.
What's yours, Eros?
My favorite, I mean, probably Plotinus.
That's
Yeah.
Nice. All right, you Headless. You into any of them or no? I think you're.
I gotta go Yambl. I gotta go Yambl too. And he's definitely my favorite. So
I like Iamblichus. I just wish he would have written more.
Don't we all? Don't we all?
I have to look into that. I don't know much about him at all, actually. Yeah, nice.
Yeah, another one is Synesius, Synesius of Cyrene. He calls him, he refers to his school as the Platonic school, and he's very much neglected. But he wrote on dreams, and he's like the, you know, there's a couple of them out there, but he was like the only one to write a treatise entirely on dreams and dream phenomena and everything else. And he was trying to reiterate, like, the charlatans always have something, like, they're like, you know, I have possession of this exclusive little bundle of tricks and knowledge that, like, no one else can have possession of, and you have to get initiated into this hyper complex system, and then you will be able to understand. Synesius throws this on its head and says, like, it's as simple as going to sleep. And, like, it's as simple as practicing the virtues, having good intentions, you know, being a true philosopher, and these profound things will come through during your dreams. And I always loved that, because he was kind of universalizing there. And Synesius is also just a total badass. I mean, he argued against the taxes that were being thrown on his city, you know, right in front of the emperor's face. So much to say about him. That's why I did a whole essay on him on the channel there. Yeah, read some Synesius. He's very, very great writer, and he has some profound stories.
well, I know the Greeks were like really into the idea of understanding dreams as you know, their form of healing, and the Asclepion was based on dreams. Their afterlife was based off of the gods that were in the Asclepion, right? Like Hygeia would offer you the cup of Lethe, which would erase your memories as you're being reincarnated. So the whole idea around the afterlife for them revolves around dreams and the connections that they have through their dreams. So it's a very ancient thing when it comes to the Greeks.
Yeah, I think the dream component is understudied and undervalued. Synesius said that he believed that the majority of myths were developed because of dream experiences. I mean, that is a profound statement that you really don't have kind of in anywhere else. But the dreams were important as far as you know, as far back as you can go. I mean, Homer describes, you know, the two gates that dreams come in from. There's the gate of horn and the gate of ivory. And through one of these gates is nothing but kind of false dreams, you know, what we would describe as like subconscious processing dreams. You know, there's no way to make sense of it. And then there's the other dreams, are like these divine dreams, where there's these very, they're kind of they inherently describe themselves to you, and they leave a different impression on the dreamer, and that these are the ones to pay attention to. And that kind of, let's say, polarity of the quality of dreams, that is also another one of these universals that, you know, you see it with the Persians. You see Egyptians refer to this as well. You see it come up in the Bible as well. Like, you know, his life is saved because an angel brought Joseph a dream at the right time, right? So yeah, the dream component, very, very much, we need to focus more on it.
I got this book right here. It's called The Dream Giants of the Pygmies, right? So it's about how these pygmy people would have these dreams of the dream giants, and those dream giants would be like a national spirit for them that would guide them and tell them where to go, where to put their fields, pretty much micromanaging their lives from their sleep, right? And so these dream giants would also come through the form of their ancestors and ancestral dreams as well. And the anthropologist that was down there studying the pygmies, actually started having dreams of these dream giants as well, and relating those dreams to the tribe, just by proxy, having a religious experience, which is really interesting.
Yes. Yeah, there's a fascinating account in the 1800s on the island of Naxos, the Greek island of Naxos, in the town Koronos. And it was a bunch of these 13-year-old girls were having these reoccurring dreams, all in the same little town. They were having these reoccurring dreams of the Virgin Mary or some kind of goddess figure coming through during the dream and saying, hey, go to this specific hill and start digging. There's icons of me in this hill that you need to rescue and that you need to save. And this happened for a while until people really started digging. And, the church sent some guy in there to kind of like put a stop to it. And he starts having the dreams, just like you said, right? He starts having the dreams and he starts digging, right? He picks up a shovel. And then, of course, they find these icons, and they built a whole, I believe they built a church around them where the icons are still stored till this day. And Orthodox Christians do a procession, kind of in homage to this situation. And so, and this happened through different generations. People, young women dreaming about these icons that were buried during this iconoclastic period and actually recovering them. So that's the kind of like all phenomena in a shared reality overlap. We like to separate, and everything's separate, but all phenomena overlap. All of spiritual reality is overlapping at all times. So you can have a lucid dream and a synchronicity and a prophetic experience, all kind of at once. I mean, I had a dream, for instance, that my buddy's Jeep was sucked up into a tornado, and all of a sudden me and him were like stranded on the road. All right. I wake up and I text him, hey, I had a dream that your Jeep was sucked into a tornado last night. And I think I still have a screenshot of it somewhere. And he texts me back, that's crazy. My Jeep was stolen last night. Right. I've had a number of these kind of premonitory dreams or synchronistic dreams, and so has so many other people. I would actually argue that everyone has these dreams. We just don't, we don't keep dream journals as much as we probably should, and we don't think about dreams to the point where we can start attracting vivid dreams. But in cultures that place this higher level of importance on the dreams, of course, you're going to find like wild dream phenomena showing up in this culture, because now, they're asking it to come. Right. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the subconscious is where like all of these patterns live that we rely on for our intuition and our foresight. So, makes sense. And like that's where we work out a lot of our subconscious corruptions, or whatever you would call them, is through dream.
Yeah.
But it gets more interesting, yeah, when you get visited by entities and stuff like that. Then it's like makes it a bit more complex.
Have you had one of those experiences?
Yeah, I have, like, about every 6 months. I would say it's very mercurial, because I usually have like a monkey dream first, and then I'll have a dream the next night that's kind of like, I see it as like a entity testing my spiritual constitution.
So the monkey it's every time the monkey comes, there's always this other thing that happens after that.
Yeah. For example, you spoke about seeing like half of your face, evil, like corrupted. I definitely had an experience like that, like following that pattern where like I had the monkey dream, and then I had a dream the next night where I had like this evil twin with me everywhere, very demonic, type of thing. But yeah, there's like a lot of illusions in the dream. It's like you're always trying to make sense of your reality, and it's throwing new things at you, and it's kind of interesting, and it definitely feels like a different entity. Mhm.
Yeah, and the lucid dream space too is another one of these things, and it can get it can put you in a very bizarre headspace when you start having a lot of lucid dreams. I just recently had like the longest one I've ever had, and I was like minutes inside of it, and I just started trying to experiment with things. I mean, one lucid dream, I was so locked in the dream that I was like, all right, I need to try to like induce an out of body experience out of the dream body. And like I was able to generate some kind of similar experience, and I was shooting upward, and then I popped back in the bedroom body, you know? And I've also had a lucid dream where I was totally lucid in the dream, but I had forgotten who the sleeper was. And that was just a very weird place to be in. And yeah, and sometimes when you wake up from these, you know, in reality, you bring over some of the essence of the dream. And, you know, like I've brought in songs from dream. I heard a song in some dream coffee shop that I woke up, I started humming it, and then I recorded it, and then I was able to like, all right, this musical thing was I heard it entirely from a dream, you know? So it's a whole nother realm, or layers and layers and layers of all of these different realms. And then we get into shared dreams, the idea that people can actually share a dream space together, come back to their bodies, and then have the same report of the same dream. You know, I think that's pretty rare, but it has happened, and there has been some fascinating cases there.
I have had a lucid dream a couple times. Usually they're pretty positive, you know, it's pretty fun to be able to, you know, fly around through flowers or whatever you want to do. But I would say, yeah, during these other dream experiences too, it is very lucid, and I am making active decisions in the dream. So it's like, you know, I'm half controlling it, but I'm half not.
Yeah.
Know?
Right. Yeah, so all of these phenomena point to an extraordinarily more interesting reality than we have been led to believe. And I think this is part of our, you know, the paradigm is shifting. The paradigm is shifting very very rapidly. I think the UFO situation is playing into this as well. You know, people being more comfortable talking about their experiences. Dogmatic religion seems to be on its way out and in its kind of death throes. Geopolitics is showing us how ridiculously tyrannical, you know, governments are, and how they have none of our interests in mind, no matter what the illusory sides you think you're on or whatever. So all of these things are playing out, and it's, you know, it's like all of our demons are going to have to come to the surface and get sorted out until we can be ushered into this sort of golden age that everybody wants, right? It's going to be a time of chaos and turmoil prior to that, and we have to live that out individually as well. So it's like we're not just going to, you know, walk into the golden age with flower petals and trumpets and everything else. Like, we're going to have to sort our individual stuff out, and it's all going to get sorted out on the world stage. So like I always say, whatever happens, it won't be boring.
It's a shit show already.
Yeah. Wild times.
Reality TV, for real.
Yeah.
Leave it to Providence.
Yeah.
Did anybody have anything else before we wrap it up? We're like at an hour and a half now. I wrap it up.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Colin, that was amazing. That was really good stuff, especially your experiences and shit. Wow. Definitely have to get you back on one day and maybe talk about some other stuff as well. Seems like you got
Yeah,
plenty we could talk about.
I'd love to. Appreciate it, man.
Even maybe more Platonism or Neoplatonism, something like that.
Oh yeah.
But, yeah. Before we wrap it up, I'll let everybody promote their own stuff one more time as we end it. Judith, the Loon, what is going on?
It's the Loon, and you could catch me on YouTube under the channel The Loon, and on X as The Loon as well. It's Colin. It was a pleasure. You opened up a lot of questions on a lot of things for me.
Good. I appreciate that. Pleasure to meet you through this space.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, thank you for joining, Judith. Appreciate it. And Eros, what is up, Eros?
Hello. Yeah, thank you, Colin. You were so open about your experiences, and I feel like not everybody is always very open about their experiences. And I do think that it's important. I feel like you're advocating for that as well. And so yeah, let's all be open about our experiences. Maybe email them to Headless Giant for Thursday mailbag. And you can find me on YouTube at ArrowsUp, and you can find me on X at ArrowsTethos.
That was great. I love that plug, Eros. Thank you. Headless Giant, my man.
Thank you. Yeah, just email them over there, headlessgiantpodcast@gmail.com, and we will read those. So I want to hear about your crazy, weird experiences, and it'll be a good time. I love talking about this stuff. You know, it's right in my wheelhouse. I love talking about Edgar Casey, afterlife experiences, out-of-body experiences. It's good stuff. We usually talk about that kind of stuff on the Trialogue, so check that out as well. It's on Sundays, 10:30 Central, and they've been really good lately, so check out the next one. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, sir. Yes, definitely go check out all those shows, even the Trilogues. Definitely check that out. Got Ethan in that as well. And Colin, please let everybody know where they can find anything you want to promote.
Yeah, so American Esoteric on YouTube. Got a lot of essays up there. Gonna be working on there a lot in the future. You will see much more. You can find my Substack as well, where I do some writings. I feel like I'm just getting started, in this space, meeting a lot of new people, and I love collecting other people's experiences as well. So yeah, just getting started. I'm a writer. I will be writing for as long as I'm able to do it. And yeah, man, I appreciate you bringing me out, and it was good to meet you all.
Oh, hell yeah. No, it was great. You helped me feel like I wasn't so crazy with some of the things I thought and experiences I had.
You're not crazy. You're not crazy.
I was like, nobody ever hears. I know that was pretty on point with some of the stuff you said. So thank you.
Great. Yeah. And I mean, I was sort of like given the signal, it's time to talk about your experiences. Like, don't worry about that anymore. But I totally respect people who don't want to go there just yet. Cause I've been there myself. It's not for everyone. You don't want to cast pearls before you know the drill, right? But yeah, I do think that there's a lot of people that will be accepting and that will have a lot of insights if you're able to bring your experiences forward, because the stakes are kind of low. Like, is it going to bruise your ego a little bit? Like, you'll be all right. You'll be all right. We're trying to get to the bottom of this strange place, this strange life we find ourselves in. So we have to get real before we can do that. And I think part of that is sort of having a conversation about what we are actually experiencing, not just what we're musing over and sort of studying.
Totally agree. I love it. Definitely got to get you back on again. Thank you, everybody else who was on the show. And thank you, everybody in chat. That is what's up. That's where we go live. And until the next one, everybody be well.